Hi, Steve here from Divorcing Japan, and in today's video, I'm going to break down what you need to know when you come to Japan, whether it's to work, date, have fun, or build a family here. There are many written rules in Japan and ways to behave, but there are a lot of unwritten rules here as well. A lot of rules that the Japanese people abide by just because they're built into the educational system. They grow up with it. It's around them all the time. And so they don't have to think about it. It's just who they are. And some of these unwritten rules might seem a little bit stupid to foreigners or people visiting here, but they're very, very important for the Japanese people. And I'll be honest, some of the Japanese people even think that some of their rules are a little bit over the top. But guess what? They abide by them. And on the whole, they live their lives by them. So when they see foreigners going around not abiding by the rules or cutting corners, they're not impressed. The great thing about Japan, and also the worst thing about Japan, is that they won't say anything 9 times out of 10. And in those situations, you might think, I might have gotten away with it, or I might have been able to pull that foreigner's card and get away with it. But everybody's watching, everyone's remembering, and they just don't say anything. But they make a decision there and then, or after a few times, just to stay out of your way. And as you get older, and as you've been here longer, you start to become more in tune to that. You catch yourself after being here 20 years looking at other foreigners doing stuff and thinking, ooh, and sucking your teeth. Like Japanese people love sucking their teeth. Quick advertisement. You can buy me a coffee below if you want to support this channel. Subscribe and like. Thank you very much. Yeah, so Japan is very safe, it's very exciting, and it's very deeply structured. You might be welcomed by everybody with open arms. I call that the honeymoon period, where you're just finding your feet and everyone's very nice and very helpful to you. Single foreigners who come to Japan often end up dating and then getting married without possibly knowing the full consequences. And as I can attest, it is dangerous if you have children here in Japan and suddenly you find yourself in a situation like mine where you're left and you have very limited access to your kids and you're going through a nasty divorce. Housing and living. We all need a place to live. And this can be the first hurdle. This can also be the first shock awakening to the fact that Japan is inherently still very wary of foreigners. Gaikokujin fuka, no foreigners allowed, still exists in Japan, and you can find agencies that rent out apartments or apartment landlords who will not rent to foreigners. You can go around and you can find restaurants and bars that have labels on the doors saying, no foreigners, please. Perhaps in the past, a landlord has rented to a foreigner and has had a bad experience, and that kind of paints all foreigners as being something to look out for and perhaps to stay away from. And in that situation, the landlord is probably going to choose to stay away from it. And so you have a lot of landlords that won't deal with foreigners. As a result, it is possible for foreigners to find housing companies that are not quite above board that will let foreigners rent, but then they end up in very small apartments with very bad facilities and no one to talk to and very high prices to pay to get out of those situations. So in that situation, when you're coming here, if you're coming here as part of a team or you've got some foreign co-workers, ask around and find the reputable companies that allow foreigners to rent. This is going to save you a lot of hassle. Find a guarantor to guarantee your apartment with you, or find a guarantor company that can co-sign. Ask for English speaking or translated leases that will really help you not to miss any of the finer details. And once you move into your apartment, remember that the walls in some of these apartments are paper thin. And Japanese people, on the whole, like the quiet atmosphere in their apartment buildings. And of course, we've all heard the horror stories of hearing Mr. and Mrs. what's-his-name next door getting up to their family building. Another thing you'll find out very quickly here is the seriousness of the garbage disposal separation procedure. Don't get caught with your pants down by Granny down the corridor putting out your rubbish with the stuff mixed into one bag, because they will be angry. And they might not say anything actually, but what you'll find is that you might find that that bag full of particular mixed items finds its way mysteriously back to outside your door. You might also see people making a big deal outside of opening your rubbish and separating it for you. Needless to say, not following these rules of how to separate your gomi, your garbage, can put you into hot water even within the first few weeks. Follow the rules. The second mistake is ignoring everyday norms. Stuff like talking loudly on the train. Speaking on your phone on the train. You might just think, hey, I mean, I'm just speaking in my normal voice. What's the difference having a phone or talking to a friend? But talking on your phone on the train is still regarded in Japan to be a big no-no, even though the Japanese people do it. They're Japanese. They get that pass. You don't. You get the eyes. And recently, because of tensions rising between foreigners, we have seen more Caped Crusaders, more Japanese people stepping up to push foreigners around on the train. Only yesterday, I heard that a friend of mine was pushed off a train by an angry Japanese person. And that is not all that common. So this tension is real at the moment. Don't be wearing your shoes where they shouldn't be worn. Take your shoes off in the lobby before you go into people's houses or before you go inside. If you go to the public bath, be sure you've got the etiquette down, because you can't just go in there and be like, I'm a foreigner, I don't know, and do all the stuff that you would. Yeah, there's no soaping up in the bath, in your home, or in the bathhouse. Yeah, we shower. It's a wet bathroom. We shower and wash the soap off first and then get into the bath after we're all clean. And the Japanese people in the public bath will expect you to do the same. Get in the bath after you are clean. Many countries around the world will serve you in English if you just speak English. And in Japan, to some degree, they can. But the English level in Japan is not so good. And so many people will try their best. But really, underneath it all, Japanese people are really excited and happy if you speak Japanese. Walking around speaking English for 20 years isn't going to really be the thing that gets people waving their support flags for you. These sort of things that might seem light-hearted in the beginning actually build up over time, and in the end you might feel in the neighborhood where you're living that people do avoid you and you feel isolated. It's probably been because of these early faux pas that you've committed, when perhaps when you were younger and you were a little bit cheeky and you hadn't quite got into your stride yet. But these things, they stick with you, and it really does take an act of God to get a second chance. Mistake number 3, not being able to speak or communicate enough in Japanese to get through daily life. This is a hassle in the end for you, but it's also a hassle for all the people around you that have to try to deal with you when you go into any kind of situation. If you cannot speak a conversational level or basic level of Japanese, you're really hanging yourself up to dry. Any problems that you might have whilst living here, if you can't explain them to other people to get help, or to the police if there's a problem, then you're already putting yourself at such a disadvantage. And also you're expecting other people to go out of their way to help you get your message through. This conversational Japanese is of most importance. Talking to the landlords, talking to work, talking to people in the supermarket, everyday norms. We're not talking about anything crazy. But then as you live here longer, you'll find out that you will need to up your Japanese game, especially when it comes to getting loans, talking with the bank, going to clinics, hospitals for medical problems. And that's my advice. Spend those evenings when you haven't got any money studying the Japanese language. It's going to set you up for the rest of your time here. And if you don't stay here for very long, when you go back to your own country, you can use it to get a cool job. Mistake number 4, Western style job hunting. You got to do a Japanese rireksho, the Japanese version of the CV. If you get an interview, you need to dress formally. And even some young Japanese people say now that it drives them crazy. They have to knock 3 times before they go into the room, or knock twice to see if somebody's in the toilet. All these social norms in the Japanese etiquette that they take for granted, even though they think they're a little bit over the top. As a foreigner, you also have to obey these. And you can wave the I'm a foreigner card, sorry I didn't know, but there's only a certain distance you can travel on that ticket. If you're going for a serious interview, make sure you've got your keigo brushed up, make sure you're wearing the right attire, and make sure you know how to deal with a Japanese style interview. That's going to set you up for the best chance of success. Mistake number 5 is a mistake that I think that many foreigners make in Japan, and whether it's justified or not is not what I'm going to go into in this video today. But the Japanese work ethic is different from the foreign work ethic. And so whatever company you're working for, and of course you can choose whether you think it's right or wrong and change jobs if you need to, but whatever company you're working for, you need to align yourself with the people around you's work ethic. You can't wave the foreigner flag and leave early every day because that's what you do in your home country. That's going to definitely lead you in a lot of hot water inside your work situation. And it could lead to isolation, it could lead to unfair treatment, and it could lead to you just getting outside the circle. Many foreigners witness the horrific, I didn't get fired, but my contract wasn't renewed. And you'll find if you come to live in Japan, a lot of the foreign job contracts are obscenely short. 1 year, 3 years. In fact, most of the part-time and the foreign contracts do rotate on a yearly basis. It's an unsaid rule. Yeah, you've got this job, but we're going to renew your contract every year. And that gives the company a chance to not renew the contract or fire you at the end of each year. And don't forget that your company's contract is probably the basis for your visa application. So if you lose your contract, you're also going to lose your visa sponsor. And with the visa rules tightening up even as I speak right now, having that visa, having that job, having all the boxes checked, and make sure you have the language ability to know exactly what's happening in your paperwork, your contract, and your visa status is of utmost importance. If you overstay your visa, even by a day or two, you're going to have to leave the country, and I think it's 10 years that you're not allowed to come back and live in Japan again. Relationships. Wow. Mistake number 6, rushing into multiple relationships because Japan feels fun but lonely. Have you ever heard of that? First year isolation, everything's very exciting, and you come across as being very exciting, and that attracts a lot of Japanese people towards you. So it's quite easy to end up in a relationship relatively soon. And whilst the honeymoon period of your relationship is often the most amazing thing ever, like in any country, that young love, it is easy in Japan to find happiness for short amounts of time. But once you get into that long relationship and start thinking about the marriage word, there are going to be cultural expectations and social expectations that you need to be aware of. First of all, in Japan, and you could say that this is common in other countries too, but in Japan, the roles of the husband and wife change after children are born. So one of the things that can change after having children is that your wife, love of your life, becomes a mother, which is great, but she becomes mother to the child and also to a certain point, mother to you as well. In fact, many Japanese households refer to themselves as mama and papa. So instead of the romantic interest that was there before, we now have different roles, and these roles are very important. Foreigners can often be blindsided and taken aback by the sudden drop in romantic interest, intimacy, and all things that they were hoping for in this perfection of marriage that they were planning on. The children become most important, and to some degree the fathers are sometimes put on the sidelines, which can be difficult for foreigners to deal with because they're usually in line with the idea that husband and wife are romantically bonded and are always trying to keep it interesting and keep that romance alive. And that doesn't often happen here in Japan. I thought my situation would be different. I even talked about it. And we promised it would be different, but it wasn't. The communication in the family is also very difficult to deal with because instead of confrontation, where you argue, you sort things out and you move forwards and you better your relationship, a lot of couples don't. A lot of couples just read the air and they don't say those things. They hold them in. They use gaman inside. And so there isn't that communication. When there's a disagreement, it's just ignored, put under the carpet, wake up the next day, back to life. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of foreigners, I find. And it was tough for me to deal with. This is mistake number 7, not understanding Japanese conflict culture. It is the way in Japan that instead of conflict and raising a voice or getting physical, most people will ignore, walk away, or avoid. Silence equals harmony. And that's why foreigners can get blindsided socially, but also in relationships where they think everything's going fine until one day they're not there anymore. Many friendships and marriages dissolve because one day they're just not there. And foreigners were often surprised and shocked because we didn't see it coming. That's the difference between our way of thinking and the way that the Japanese people do things. Kuki yomenai, which means you cannot read the air. Mistake number 8, and to a certain degree, I was very guilty of this, even though I didn't feel it. It's just something that happened naturally. Becoming too reliant on your partner. Taxes, health insurance, immigration forms, bills, city hall tasks, family register tasks, legal paperwork. As time goes on in a marriage, you can often find that all these things are just taken care of, and you kind of lapse into a false sense of security. To be honest, I didn't know at the time how much my wife was stressed out by having to fill out paperwork for me a lot. And a lot of the time, I didn't even know that the paperwork was being filled out or I had to fill it out. And it wasn't until I became single again and I had to do all that by myself that I realized that must have been a burden. And as I said before, perhaps we could have sat down and discussed and talked about that so that I could have done it myself. But I don't remember being in that situation where I was told that I should do it myself or showed how to do it, or, it sounds stupid for me to say now, but I just didn't know. So I think before you start leaning on any partner, you need to learn self-reliance. You need to learn how to survive in Japan by yourself and keep doing everything by yourself, even if you meet a romantic partner or get married or start a family. Mistake number 9 is getting married without understanding the legal implications of what you're signing, especially if you're getting married and you're building a house, you're taking out loans. You need to go through all those contracts and make sure you're understanding everything that's written in them. I too was blindsided on this one because throughout my divorce, I was made aware of parts in my housing contract and my loan contract that I wasn't aware of, like, for example, whose name things were in. Japan's law currently only supports sole custody after divorce, and usually, and you can look at some of my other videos for this, the judge will award that sole custody to the mother. Mediation is slow and difficult and daunting for a foreigner. If your spouse leaves you suddenly and takes the kids, you can't force them back and you can't go and bring them back. Foreigners have little leverage, but so do fathers in general. Even the Japanese fathers, there's not a lot they can do when they're going through this divorce procedure. Family expectations drastically change through divorce. You're in the circle, you're in tight with your partner's family, and then the next day you're out the circle and it's like you'd never existed. Cold. And mistake number 10. Losing your own identity through trying to fit in with Japan. You can wake up one day and it's crept up on you that you don't really know who you are anymore because you've become so obsessed with being here in Japan and trying to get it right every day and trying to gain the support of Japanese people and your partner. And you can wake up and not remember the drive you had for the passions you had. You can end up being in a marriage where you're not getting intimacy and it seems like you just go to work and bring back the paycheck every day. And this can put you in a very, very difficult mental state. It's not just Japan, but it's something to be aware of here. Love does not override the cultural instincts of Japanese people. Now, of course, there are some Japanese move to other countries or some Japanese who have relationships and marriages with foreigners where they are successful because they're slightly off the Japanese thinking radar. But on the whole, the paradise and honeymoon period seems great and you think you're the exception. I certainly thought I was the exception, especially after having 3 beautiful kids and having a house. I didn't think it would happen to me, but one day, boom, they were gone. So this really woke me up and made me look inside myself and think about how I can better myself. This idea to not lose your identity, and if you are losing your identity, do anything you can to try and bring it back and be your own person. Practice self-reliance. Make sure that you are doing everything for yourself so you can feel positive and great for being you, not that you're some kind of third leg on your partner's body. That leg's going to get itchy one day and it's just going to get cut off and thrown to the side. And I will add at the last point there that finances in Japan are usually controlled by the wife, the mother of the family. And so a lot of the fathers, they just bring back the paycheck and they get a bit of pocket money. And as a foreigner, you might want to think about controlling your own finances rather than going into this. Certainly, I wasn't very good with money when I was younger, so I handed it all over to my wife. But then, yeah, this all happened. And when it all happened, I didn't have any money left. But now I do, and I'm self-reliant and I'm doing it by myself, so I feel much more positive and I'm finding myself again, so life seems to be getting better. And my final point for this video is that the rules are changing, and I'm going to do a video next week looking at the new rules as far as medical expenses are concerned, and a lot of focus has come on the foreigners for medical expenses. So I've got a video coming out talking about all that next week, and so please like, subscribe and support my channel. I'm a young channel, so anything you can do, subscribe, that would be really helpful. And also you can buy me a coffee as well if you've got this far. Japan is an incredible country to live, and it certainly is the place where I want to be. I love being in Japan, but I feel that after living here for 20 years, there are a lot of things that I can say that could help new people like you guys who want to come and live here in Japan, not fall into the same pitfalls as I did. And we all think that we're the exception to the rule. However, once you get here, we all get banded together under one label. It doesn't matter where you're from, your background, your education, your financial status. We all get bundled together as foreigners, gaikokujin. Come to Japan, Get to know Japan. Fit in with Japan. Don't lose your self-identity. Japan is incredible, it's beautiful, and it can be fantastic to live here. It's safe and peaceful. Build your life, know the system, learn the culture, and keep your independence. I had a lot of support when I came to Japan, and a lot of people warned me about a lot of things, but I didn't listen to a lot of those things. But I tell you from now, it's true. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the channel, and I hope this video has been helpful for you. And have a great time, and have a good time coming to Japan. Bye-bye.